This is a short tutorial on how to make your own basic dataset in SPSS. So there's two ways that you may be wanting to make your own dataset. Maybe you've imported your Excel spreadsheet into SPSS, and what will happen then is that Excel spreadsheet will show up in your data view, and that first top row of variables will show up here in the variable view. And what you're going to need to do then is fill out more information about your variables so that SPSS knows how to handle them when you want to do analysis. The other circumstance might be that if you're creating a database or dataset from scratch in SPSS, in which case you would probably want to start by going through and taking your code book or your survey or whatever it is you're working with and filling in information about each of the different variables that you're looking at. So maybe you're doing this project on books, and maybe your first variable is just the name of the book, right? So you need to tell SPSS a few things about this. They need to know kind of how to handle this variable. And the first thing you have to tell it is like what type of variable it is. So some of the most common types of numeric is kind of the most common. So if you're using a number to represent it, numeric is usually the best bet. Also, date is another excellent choice if you're trying to keep track of the month, date, and year of something that happened. This can give you a format with which to enter your information, and SPSS knows how to handle that information as a meaningful number. You also can use a dollar or a monetary units. This is useful. And finally, string variables are variables that are a word, essentially. And usually we need to tell it how many characters might be in that word. Book names can be kind of long, so I'm making this a lot of characters. We want to give it a label. So the label is what shows up when you make, say, a graph about a particular variable. So the name of the book. The name over here always needs to be short. It always needs to be 8 characters or less, with no spaces and no special characters. Oftentimes we should tell SPSS what the values of our variable are, but in this case we don't, because the name of the books are all original, right? So there's no repeats there. So then what we can do is we can go and we can say, okay, the first one is the little engine that could. The second one is Good Night Moon. Right, so we can go through and we can write in the names of our books. Usually I wait until I've entered all of my data before I do that. So our second variable might be the year that a book is published. And so we probably want to keep just the numeric type there. I'm explaining here in the label the year the book is published. And we probably want to go over and explain to SPSS that it is measured in the scale or interval ratio. That's the kind of variable that it is. Might be that I am trying to keep track of what genre a book is, and this is also numeric. Even though this is probably a nominal variable, we're still representing it with numbers, right? We're not writing in the words of each genre. We want it to be a number there that SPSS can organize and compare. So the genre of the book. So we want to tell SPS here is what each of these numbers means. So we're going to tell SPSS that when we wrote in a 1, what we really meant is that this was a fairy tale. I'm going to add that here. And when we wrote in 2, what we really meant that it was an animal story. And we wrote in a 3, what we really meant it was a real life story. And so on. And we can always go back in with anything in this. We can always go back and we can change the name of the variable, we can change the label, we can change the values. This is all modifiable because we might decide that in our graph we want it to look a little bit different, or we accidentally miscoded something. So we can always go back in and say, oh, I don't want it to be called animal story, I want it to be called stories about animals instead. You can always change it. We also want to tell SPSS if there's missing data. Right? It might be that there are no missing values, like we know the year of every book that was published, we know the name of every book, but it might be for the genre, maybe that doesn't apply or something. So I want to tell SPSS that when we write in 98 or 99, it means that the data is missing in that case, and then it shouldn't be included in analysis. This is a nominal variable, so I want to tell SPSS that. I'm going to do my last one, which is, this is a not very good variable, gendered, which is also still numeric. Say how gendered the book is. and maybe 1 is extremely gendered, 2 is somewhat, you can see why this is not a good variable, somewhat gendered, 3 is a little gendered, and we'll say this is gender neutral. What's great is that if this is a categorization that we're going to use for lots of different things, we can always copy and paste these values. So for example, if you use a Likert scale question, you're going to be asking a lot of questions that go, strongly disagree, agree, neutral, agree, strongly disagree. I can just sort of copy and sort of paste those into additional variables. I also can paste my missing variables instead of repeating them over and over again. It's going to be consistent. Because it makes it just so much easier to fill this out. And this is an ordinal variable, so I want to tell SPSS that. So I should go through and fill out all of my variables and then go into data view and fill in, okay, so for the little engine that could, it was published in 1940-54. The genre is, I would say it's probably not a real life story. It's probably a fairy tale. And this year, if you notice, it has like 1954 period 00. I can go back in and change that and tell it that I actually want 0 decimal places because I find it distracting. Right? So that's an okay thing to do. If you find 1.00 distracting to look at, you can go back in and you can tell SPSS that you want fewer decimal places. So here's some of the basics on how to make a little tiny data set in SPSS.